Hey folks, so as you can see, we have an issue with the quad. It's throwing a code 12 and there's a flashing engine light. So on today's episode of Northern Outlier, I'm going to show you how to diagnose this problem. I'm going to also show you how to fix it. So make sure you stay tuned, hit that like button, hit subscribe down below as well. Let's get to it. So just the other day, I was working on a project, I was using the quad, shut it off. When I came back to it to start it up, it wouldn't start. I got a flashing engine light and a code 12 on the screen. I immediately thought it was a battery issue because I've had issues with the battery in the past, so I tried charging it up. I got nothing at all. So this obviously left me scratching my head. So when I went on the Google and Googled code 12 on a Grizzly 700, it came up and it said it's the CPS sensor, the crankshaft positioning sensor, which basically means the reason it's throwing that code 12 is it's not sending enough voltage back. Now, I'm not a mechanic, and I kind of looked into it and read into it a little bit more. That error code can mean so many different things. A lot of people said just go ahead and replace that sensor. Well, there was a lot of people that replaced that sensor and it didn't fix the issue. So I kind of looked into things. I have an idea of how to diagnose it. I'm going to walk you through right now exactly how to check and see what the issue is. Because it might not be that sensor. So since I figured out that this was probably some kind of an electrical issue, the one thing you're going to need to diagnose the problem is a multimeter. So fairly basic tool. You can get them at basically any hardware store. I'd never used one before, so I had to kind of figure out how to use it, but we're going to get into it. I'm going to show you right now kind of the steps to go through to check a few things to see if there's an issue with a certain part on here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check the battery. So I'm going to connect the negative and the positive here onto the battery, and we're going to read how many volts essentially. I've got it plugged in right now, so the battery should be fully charged. So I'm going to turn it to DC volts. I'm going to touch my black to my negative terminal, my red to my positive. So this is reading at 12.93 volts. So to me that's perfect. That should provide enough power to start this up. Next thing I'm going to look at is the solenoid. So the battery is has a connection directly to the solenoid. From the solenoid, or the starting solenoid, or the relay, starting relay I think they call it, that runs back to the starter. And right now I'm getting the indication that from that code that there's not enough power being sent back. So we've checked the battery's fine. I'm going to check the solenoid, so I'm going to show you how to do that now. Again, we're going to be using the multimeter. So first things you want to do is you want to expose the two terminals on the solenoid starting relay, and we're going to check both terminals to see what the voltage is. So this is your starting relay right here, or your starting solenoid. It's got two terminals. It's connected directly to the battery via connection. So the first thing I want to do is I want to check the voltage on both of these terminals. I'm going to be using the red. The black one is still on the negative terminal on the battery. So I'm going to take a reading on the one that's directly connected from the battery. I'm getting a reading of 12.92 volts, so that's perfect. That means that there's power going through from the battery to the solenoid. So now that we've checked this terminal, we're going to check this one. When we check this one, we want to see 0 on the voltmeter, and we have 0 on the voltmeter. So if this had a voltage of like 12 or a higher voltage, it would mean that the solenoid is stuck open, in which case you'd probably have to replace the actual solenoid. The other thing to check for while you're looking at the solenoid is the fuses. So you could see that there was two fuses, one on either side of that solenoid. So just pull those out, take a look at them. You usually can tell if it's burnt out or if it's like melted or black or whatever. You might just have to replace those fuses. So now that I know my solenoid is working okay, or seems to be working, I know the battery's working, I know the solenoid's working, the battery's sending power to the solenoid. So my next thing I'm going to check is I'm going to check the starter. So I want to see if there's voltage going through to the starter. So as I said, multimeter, set it on DC volts. Make sure your black is touching the terminal on the battery, and we're going to use the red to touch the connection on the starter as we try to start it. Watch your meter, watch your reading. We want to see voltage going through to the starter. So I got a reading on that so I can see that there is power going through the system to the starter. I have a pretty good idea now. I think it is the starter itself that's not working. But we're going to do one more test. So I'm actually going to pull the starter out and put power directly to it with a booster pack or a car battery. And we're going to see if it will actually turn. So that's the next step. We're going to pull this apart. I'm going to pull the starter out and test that and see if that's the issue. So the starter is a little bit difficult to get to. I'm going to pull off a few pieces here. You want to have access on both sides, actually. I'll tell you that right now. Because you're going to need to push the starter out probably from the other side. But basically getting the starter out, there's two kind of bolts going down on either side. I got to loosen off and I got to unconnect the connection from the battery. So I got the two big bolts out and it's disconnected from the battery. So the next thing is just pulling the starter out. So how you want to do this is typically on the opposite side, you want to take a screwdriver and just kind of push it gently, just because you're not going to be able to really reach in and pull, and that should kind of loosen it up. And that the end that goes into the gear should just kind of slide out. So we'll do that now. We'll kind of pull it out and we'll put power to it. So there you have it. It came out super easily. That's your starter. So now what we're going to do is we're going to put power to it. So I've got a booster pack. You could use a car battery with cables, jumper cables. I'm going to show you now how to do that. How this works, and I'll show close up. You want to attach your black negative to the, you want to ground it. So you're going to put it kind of just, you can just clip it on here. On this terminal here, I'm going to tap the red cable to that. Now make sure you put on eye protection. It will spark. It's going to spark. You want to be holding on to the starter because it's going to probably take off on you. So there you have it. That's our problem. The starter is gone on this. So that's how you diagnose it. And as you can see there, I had the battery hooked up. It was sparking. It should have started right up. It didn't. I know I wasn't hanging on to it like I told you guys to. That's because I knew ahead of time that it was already pooched. But that's how you figure it out. We know we need a new starter. Hopefully that solves our problem. So there you have it, folks. We figured out what was wrong with the quad. We need a new starter. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna order a new starter. I'm gonna leave you on a bit of a cliffhanger. I'm gonna finish this up in next week's episode where I'll be installing the new starter. So make sure you hit that like button. Hit subscribe down below if you haven't already. Stay tuned. We'll see you on next week's episode of Northern Outlier. Thank you guys.